sure by now you've heard of the large sturgeon that was found in the Detroit River by fish biologist Jason Fischer and a couple of crew members that were with him. Well, I got a chance to sit down with Jason and crew for an interview to talk about that day and that catch.
I love the drawing of the fish as behind you. So I guess I gotta ask, like, what was the overall reaction when you found this fish? I'll let you start, Jason.
Oh, well, we're of course pretty excited. So this was, we've been seeing, I think that, well, let's let me just kind of step back. So it was a pretty slow day for us. We had up to that point caught one fish in a 5-gallon bucket. So it wasn't a very eventful day. We had 6 lines set, and this was the 5th one that we were pulling. So this was our second to last one. And we weren't really expecting much on it. So as I'm pulling in the line, I can feel something tugging, and it's like, oh, it feels like there's a fish on there. And so, we're getting closer and closer to where the fish is. We're removing hooks from, we have set lines. Are you familiar with trot lines at all, or?
No.
Basically, it's a rope with a number of hooks that clip onto it, and we have 50 hooks on each of our lines. So it's about a 500-foot line. So we probably getting close to about halfway through the line. Man, maybe my mind's playing tricks on me. I don't think there's anything on there anymore. And as the fish got closer to the boat, you could feel it again. I was like, oh, well, maybe not. And it wasn't, they don't really pull that hard when they're on the set line. So it's kind of hard to tell if it's a big fish or not until they get closer to the boat. And as it got closer, it's like, whoa, this is a big fish. And this was my first week out on the water. So Jenny and Paige will probably be a better reference for just kind of the general reaction, because mine was like, oh, this one's bigger than all the other fish we've seen. But they have a better gauge of how big those fish were.
So Jenny and Paige, what was your reaction when you see this giant fish that's basically as tall as all of us?
Yeah, so I was actually driving the boat at the time. So Jason said, okay, yeah, there's a fish. And I looked over and I noticed like the shadow of the fish coming up. So I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, Paige, there's a fish. And then I did a double take and saw it again and was just like, oh my gosh, there's a really big fish. And it was kind of one of those, like, up until that point, the largest fish Paige and I had seen was about 123 pounds. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this fish is 150 pounds or something like that. But I don't think it was until we got it on the boat that it kind of dawned on me how big it actually was. So it was kind of one of those, like, I think we were all in shock a bit. Yep.
So I just got to ask, what did you guys do with the fish after? Did you let it go or dinner?
Yeah, so all fish that we catch are released after we do a workup on them. So we collect a couple different measurements, total length, fork length, girth. Each fish gets fitted with 2 different types of tags. One is like a microchip. It's called a pit tag. It's similar to what your pets at home would have. Another one is called a Floyd tag, and that's put on behind their dorsal fin. That's more so for fishermen and other anglers in the area. If they were to capture a fish like this again, they can call our office, and we actually are able to tell them the history of the fish, when that fish was originally tagged, where we caught it, and the size it was when we caught it. And we send them a cooperator patch and a nice letter in the mail. So it's a really good way to engage the public in our science. Another thing we check for are lamprey marks and just overall health of the fish, if we see any large wounds or anything like this. And then typically we have a portable ultrasound machine that we carry around with us to try to tell the sex of the fish. But this year we're doing a different study where we're able to just collect a small tissue sample from one of their fins, and we send that in for genetics, and that can actually tell us if it's a male or a female. And then
So-
after all that, the fish goes back in the water.
So have you guys collected any more information on the fish?
Not yet.
So,
No, so I guess the only bit of information that we're getting on that would be new is getting that genetics sample process that Paige mentioned.
so after I heard this story, I'm like, I must speak to them. Like I must speak with them about this. Are you guys aware? Like, I'm sure you guys are aware that the story has kind of gone international. Has that surprised any of you?
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, we kind of anticipated it to blow up a little bit within our inner circle, but that we're on week 2 now of kind of fielding interviews and inquiries about this fish. So to say we're surprised, I think, is an understatement.
Yeah. I kind of had a feeling maybe it would be picked up by the Detroit news because like that's local, and like fishermen or other sturgeon biologists would be interested, but I didn't think it would be anything like this.
I mean, I first read this story in the Independent in the United Kingdom, kind of and CNN. So it's definitely been a big story. Are you surprised, Jason?
Oh yeah, like Paige and Jenny said, we were all expecting that it'd probably get picked up by the local press. There's some reporters that typically will write stories about some of the work that we're doing and kind of more of a local perspective. So we were expecting something along those lines. We were not expecting it to even reach the national stage that it did, but yeah, I guess it's provided us a good opportunity to kind of talk about the program that we've been running at the Fish and Wildlife Service to monitor the sturgeon populations within the Detroit River and throughout the Great Lakes. And so that's been nice to have that kind of platform to be able to talk about all the great science that's been going on.
Yeah, and anything else you guys would like to add?
I guess, well, I was gonna say one thing I kind of wanted to follow up on, Paige's comment about how the fish are tagged and released. That's a very important part of our monitoring program, is being able to recapture these fish later on down the road. And based on kind of the number of fish that we recapture, we can start to figure out how many fish are using the Detroit River and the other rivers that we monitor. So it's very important for us to release these fish alive and healthy and be able to see them again, so we can figure out how many fish are out there and keep a finger on the pulse of their population. They're listed as threatened in Michigan and I believe endangered in Ontario. So they're definitely a species of conservation interest.
Plus, everybody likes a good fish story too, right? So
This is a story for around the campfires.
yep.
Yeah. One of our supervisors said the other day, or maybe it was, I don't know, after we caught it and told him the story about catching it, like, this is going to be one of those stories that like morphs over time. But I think now with all the news, we're pretty much going to have the true story out there. It's not going to morph that much.
We don't get to play a true fish tale with this. We have too many people that can fact check us.
So did he believe you guys when you told this story, or did he just turn around and walk away without saying a word?
Not immediately. Once we got the fish on the boat and did all of our measurements and collected the data we needed and released the fish, we sent a quick picture to our boss, and he's basically like, no way, you guys are fibbing. Like, no, this is not.
This is a plastic thing that you planted in the boat.
Yep. So once all three of us called him, it's 3 against 1 here. And
yeah, he ended up calling, and we're talking to him on the boat afterwards, and he's like, the fact that all of you are like, oh my God, and yeah.
He
Yeah. Well,
he could coordinate that good of a story if we tried between the two of us. So
and I mean, the picture we took is we unfortunately weren't able to get more pictures, and we would have loved to get one of us kind of releasing the fish and swimming away, but yeah, just the sheer size of that fish kind of prevented us from moving it around. And the one that's been floating around is a picture of a fish on our measuring board, and that's what we used to get the length of it. And it's longer than the measuring board, which is over 2 meters. I don't know how long it is exactly. I've never had to use all of it until then, but
Yeah. We had to
You can just kinda
add a
see-
measuring tape to the end of it.
yeah, you can see the size of the fish relative to that and Jenny, who's in the picture, and just kind of looking back in our database of all the fish that we've captured, and even some of our partners at Michigan DNR and other agencies. Like, this is by far the biggest fish that's been recorded in the Detroit River, but not to say it's the biggest fish out there, just the biggest one that we've seen.
Do you guys
And the
think there's
reason-
bigger fish out there?
Oh,
possible.
there's always a bigger fish. Yeah, it's hard to say, how many big fish like that are out there, and what size they are exactly, but
Yeah. I've
Kinda
heard
wonder-
stories of a 300-pounder in Lake Michigan, but there's no documentation of it that I can find. So
yeah. And one of the things I've learned over the years is fish, someone always catches one just a little bit bigger. So I mean, we're pretty confident that this is one of the biggest fish around currently, but how many more are out there with it is I guess up for tails.
The size is one thing to focus on too, but just the age of the fish and what that fish must have kind of lived through and been able to see, at least from the water, is I think the more incredible point of this. I mean, we have a partner with Michigan DNR who created algorithm basically to estimate age based off of length and weight.
yeah.
And since no fish really in this size range has been caught in the past, we didn't have, the chart stops at a certain point. We didn't have something with this length and weight on it to compare it to. So we say it's around 100 years old or more, but that's definitely a little conservative, I think. So I mean, we're talking 1920 that this egg was hatched, at least. So
And how long more do you think it'll survive?
They can supposedly live up to 150 years, but who knows? Like, once they get past, 30 years
25,
roughly,
30.
it's hard to determine the age because the structures we use, they put rings down kind of like a tree, but after like 25 to 30 years, the rings are so close together, it's hard to actually distinguish one from another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of the surveys that we do when we tag the fish, we know when we tagged them, so we can, when we recapture them, we can figure out at least how much they've aged. And for some of the younger fish we catch, we can have a pretty good idea of how old they were when we caught them. So as the study continues and the monitoring goes on, we'll be able to get better and better estimates of just how long these fish can live.
Yep.
Alrighty, well, this has definitely been a fish tale that nobody ever saw coming. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. And this interview will air either later today or tomorrow. And I'll definitely air the full interview on our YouTube channel, as well as, and might kind of shorten this interview for the actual show, but both versions will be up. So I just want to thank you guys for being here and for telling this tale that certainly deserves to be told.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, Zach.